Hello guys, I'm your new host, Captain Riku, and for those who are unaware, this is not my main channel. My main channel is Prince Zucchini. On that channel, I mainly discuss Dragon Ball, but here, I'm going to mainly discuss my other favorite passion, or like one of my other favorite passions, Five Nights at Freddy's. Despite my deep love for the Dragon Ball franchise, Five Nights at Freddy's happened to be a franchise I was always connected to. I literally grew up with it, and it grew up with me. I think this is fairly evident given the fact that I do have some Five Nights at Freddy's shorts on my channel where I discuss like the most common theories like the DCI, the Bite of 87, etc. However, since Prince Zucchini is mainly my main Dragon Ball channel, I began realizing why not make a FNAF channel where I can discuss mainly FNAF. If you're a FNAF fan like me, make sure to subscribe to this channel. If you're a Dragon Ball fan like me too, make sure to subscribe to my main channel, Prince Zucchini. Now with that all, we cut and dry now. The topic of this video will be revolving around a certain topic, the dead children incident. In my opinion, the way I see it, at least, it's one of the most controversial topics in the FNAF franchise or the FNAF community as a whole. And it does have several questions surrounding it. Is the DCI real? Do they possess the toys? Is it still canon? I may or may not be talking about all three of them, by the way. And I'll give my reason why I believe those are the cases. And it is one of the most misunderstood things in the entire community anyways. So I figured why not have this be the main topic to be talked about first. And I'll give my take on what the DCI is and what happened with it. Or even more specifically, what's it about. First things first, we need to discuss what the DCI is about or why it exists in the first place. The DCI is basically the second set of MCI that happened in FNAF 2. And the reason why it's separate from the MCI is because it's a completely separate incident unlike what happened. You see, the DCI comes from this mini game called Save Them, and it quite literally explains what happened. Withered Freddy is quite literally active looking around for ways to save the children, the ones that have been killed in the newer restaurant. And depending what happens, you could get jumped by William Afton. Either that or the minigame itself just blinks out. However, it basically tells us what we need to know. The idea that it's from a separate set of murders is basically implied by two things. One, the game is constantly hitting at the fact that there's a previous location, which had to be closed down for a reason. And the second reason is that Withered Freddy is active, which shouldn't be possible unless he's just programmed to be up at night for whatever reason. And the children who are possessed by children at that point can bypass that kind of programming. And we know this especially because of FNAF 1. And with all that, it basically gives us a reason to understand why the DCI is a separate case of murders than the MCI. And now that we know what it is, we can question, when did it happen? Many people point towards the fact that it happened in Night 3 based off the phone calls that we hear that night. Specifically, phone guy talking about some incident that, sounds tragic. However, what if I told you that it's possible that happened even earlier than that? You see, in the DCI minigame, Party Room 4 quite literally has two tables. One of them has blood under it. However, there's an inconsistency. You see, Party Room 4 in the cameras themselves during the gameplay doesn't even have two tables, it only has one. At least from what we're shown. This is interestingly one of the most overlooked things in the entire game because there's clearly supposed to be two tables according to the Save Them minigame, and yet there's only one in the cameras. Not to mention, there is more evidence than that. But first, let me ask you something. Did you ever notice how dirty the rooms look? The party rooms specifically? The one spill in Party Room 2? The uncleaned walls in every party room there is? And how Mangle itself is quite literally in a very specific position despite being a, take apart, put back together attraction, meaning that some of her parts should have been in other places each night. All of these are quite literally crucial factors because it quite literally hints at the idea that maybe, just maybe, the gameplay of Five Nights at Freddy's 2 takes place during an investigation of the building. This is actually supported by the fact that Fall Guy never really seems to mention what happens during the daytime when it's open. Well, other than that one statement where he mentions what the toys do to the adults and not the kids. But you see, there's an explanation for that in itself. However, I'm going to save that explanation towards the end of the video. By the way, you guys notice how Phone God mentions that there's supposed to be a birthday? And if you look in every party room there is, you can see birthday decorations all over the walls. And the ceilings themselves, too. Almost as if a birthday was planned before the place got locked down and put on an investigation. Now you see, this next detail that I'm about to mention, it's likely going to shock you. You see, there's a certain detail in the DCI map itself, during the minigame. You see, there's this feeling that it's always more than what we see. And I think I know why. You see, they seem to be hidden specifically in blind spots of the cameras in the map. What is that supposed to mean exactly? To answer that, we'll have to go back to the gameplay, specifically on the cameras. And let's compare a few rooms on the cameras, should we? You see, side by side, Party Room 1 and Party Room 2, they don't even look the same. What I'm specifically talking about is the fact that Party Room 1 seems to have a peculiar shadow, and that's a very convenient spot. I say this because it almost lines up with the DCI minigame version of Party Room 1, and it's really weird given that Party Room 2 doesn't even have that kind of shadow. However, Party Room 1 does. If you take a good look at the main hall camera as well, specifically at the bottom left part of your screen, there's also a really weird shadow there. You see, there happens to be a reason why that the DCI map has the kids under the blind spots of the camera. And as for the gameplay itself, it really does seem like that they could be hiding in those shadows, specifically the corpses of those kids. And I think this is the case because Jeremy Fitzgerald, the night guard we play as, seems to be working throughout the constantly mentioned investigation that's been going on throughout the game itself. You see, what I've been trying to say here is that FNAF 2's gameplay may take place in the building while it's on lockdowns, or in an investigation. And what you may be asking now is that, why did they not take care of the bodies if they found them already? Well, that's simple. They're looking for evidence on who the killer is. You see, despite them being placed in conveniently blind spots of the cameras in the Save Them map, I don't think that William Afton placed them there. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't even think he was there canonically in the Save Them minigame. What I do think is that Withered Freddy and William Afton actually add a symbolic meaning to the Save Them minigame itself, interestingly enough. I think Withered Freddy being active symbolizes the fact that the MCI is already possessing the Withers at this point. And I think William Afton attacking Withered Freddy is supposed to symbolize that he's the murderer. I say this because if Foxy Go 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 was the only evidence we have of him being the murderer, it would be pretty vague. And with only that and the Save Him minigame, I don't think we would understand why he would be able to get inside the building when it's like nighttime, or why he would be there. So for me personally, I think the intention was to show who the murderer itself was, how he got in, and to show that the MCI already happened at this point, going to show that the DCI is a separate set of murders entirely. And with all that digging out of the way, I think it's time we discuss the story of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 takes place in 1987, a prequel to the first game. William Afton becomes a day shift guard under the name of Dave Miller, and sometime after, during the night, he kills another set of children, and then he goes on to stuff them into the toy animatronics. The new and improved Freddy's has his first night guard who complained about conditions and about the animatronics moving around at night, and once the pizzeria was on lockdown, he quit the job. Over the week while the first guard was working, though, the animatronics started acting up. Around this time, the investigation started happening. And sometime during the investigation, the staff and investigation team themselves found the kids and placed them in the blind spots of the cameras. Side note, I do think this is by coincidence. I say this because some of the shadows in the game themselves is not completely hidden. Anyways, after the lockdown, they decided to close the restaurant for a couple days. However, it happened to be on a kid's birthday, which quite really upset them. So Ralph sets up a party for that kid, and it was going to be the final event. And it was a good chance to prove themselves to the investigation team. So after Jeremy Fitzgerald finished his week, he was transferred to the day shift. However, this was where the final straw, the bite of 87, happened, causing the restaurant to close overall. And that was what I think was the story of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. And with that, I think we're good for this video. I really tried my best to piece things together with what I found with everything within the game, and I hope it finally makes sense to you guys. Regardless, like I said, this is going to be it for this video. If you like this kind of content, make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. Well, this one. Share so you can spread my channel around if you're interested in content like this. And I'll see you later. Sayonara.